everybody, my name is Matthias, also known as Sacco, and today I'm going to talk to you about FL Studio 12 performance mode and also about how to use launchpads and do animations and work with video and also DMX devices all in real time. So first things first, we have to enable the launchpads and set them up to work with FL Studio. If I had one launchpad, that doesn't represent any problem. But if I have more than one, I have to set an ID to each device. So in order to do so, I have to turn the units off and turn them on while pressing this little setup button here. So when I do that, I get this screen here, which tells me how many IDs I can assign. And in this case, I have 16 IDs possible per unit. In this case, the ID for the unit is going to be number 1. For this unit is going to be number 2. For this is going to be number 3 and 4. So after you set an ID, in this case is number 1, you press the setup button again, and the unit will reboot. And now it's in the normal mode again. Next step is to go in FL Studio and just enable all 4 units. And in this case, I'm going to just go ahead and enable them. And as you can see, the screen changes, the launchpad lights change to the FL Studio mode. It is important that you set up a port for each launchpad. You don't use this first Launchpad Pro port. You use the MIDI 2 ports on each of them. And you also assign a port number for each launchpad, and also you select here Launchpad Pro. That is important on each of them. So I did all that already. So the ports are 195, 96, 97, and 98 for 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they are already set up in FL Studio, and you can just start working with them. Now I'm gonna do a little test. Then I'm gonna load up a MIDI out. Here I have it. And I'm gonna just explain how to put them in animation mode. This is by default the normal standard mode, which is, I'm gonna put the project in performance mode. And I'm going to run this macro called prepare for performance mode. And that will create this sort of grid where this is A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, whatever you want to call it, but it's a grid. And if you put elements there, you see them reflected on the launchpads. So you can clearly see what goes where when you play your performance. And this is the standard mode. But there is the other mode, which is animation mode. And if you want to do animations, you don't want to have all these elements cluttering your animations. So in order to do so, we open a MIDI out with the port of the launchpad you want to put in animation mode. In this case, I'm going to work only with launchpad number 1, just to make things easier. And go ahead and open a piano roll. And there's this note called G10, which is at the end of the keyboard. And that note was specially assigned for the launchpads to go in 3 modes. The first mode is the normal default mode, and you control that by adjusting the velocity. So like around this area, you have the normal default mode. But if you go ahead and put the velocity higher and click on the node, and so just send the data to the launchpad. Pay attention to this launchpad. The buttons are not lit anymore because you are gonna send your own animations there. There is another mode which is called the video mode, which reflects whatever is around the mouse cursor. So I am around this node, for example, and you can see it in the launchpad. So wherever I travel, I see it on the launchpad. And this is gonna be this was a proof of concept, and this is gonna open the door to new features that we're gonna come with. All right, so let's just put this one in normal, in animation mode. Just click on it after you set the velocity, and the lights go off. Now, I want to do just a little test with the piano roll. You see the notes there showing up? Okay, I'm going to tell you how all this works. You, after you put the launchpads in animation mode, you can send your own data, animation data, which means sending brightness, saturation, and color via using MIDI outs. So I'm gonna just use this MIDI out for brightness. I'm gonna put launchpad 1 brightness. I'm gonna just clone this. Then I'm gonna call this launchpad 1 color, but we use the name hue, yeah, instead of color. We're gonna use launchpad 1 hue, and then the third MIDI out is gonna call launchpad 1 saturation. Now I'm gonna explain how all this works, but first of all we need to assign ports. We have to assign channels to each of them. So for brightness, I'm going to use channel 1. For hue, I'm going to use channel 2. And for saturation, I'm going to use channel 3. Now we're ready to control and send animation and do a small example on this first launchpad. Now, things work like this. Each row is associated with an octave in the piano roll. So if I put a C note somewhere, then you have the first light here lit. If I start moving, I can move on the pads and I can just leave it where I want. If I go to the next octave, you start on this next row. I go to the next octave, the other row. So if I put notes on all the octaves, for example, and I play this, I have all these 5 rows, the first light of these 5 rows enable or lit. I'm gonna go ahead and put more, and then I have the first row or the first line of of every row lit. Now I'm using C# here in the last row, and also C# on the last row, the last upper row. The reason for this is that the launchpads, they have 10 pads on the big rows, but on the top and on the bottom, you only have 8. right? So from row 2 to row 8, we use C to A. That's the limit on the other side. So from C to 8, you have the first row, and I can just lead all of them. Oops. And now we have the first row all lit. We can go ahead and do the same with the second row. And we can go and do the same with the rest. And just fill up the whole launchpad with lights. All right. Now, since this row starts with C sharp and there are only 8 lights, if I just turn them all the 8 lights, the last one is going to be G sharp. And that happens on the lowest row and also on the highest row, from C sharp to G sharp. Then you have all your launchpad lead in this case. Now, I want to change the color of all this. What I can do is basically copy and paste, and I'm gonna basically put the brightness to the middle, and I'm gonna copy that again here. So I have brightness, color, and saturation of that color I previously set here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the saturation all the way up. That you should normally do if you want the lights to be fully saturated. That means the color fully present. Now the color, you change it by moving the velocities, by adjusting and changing the velocities of the notes. So the bottom is red and the top is also red, and in between you have many different colors. You can of course change them on the fly, and I'm gonna explain later. Next thing is to recap on this. Basically, the brightness should be at the middle, the velocity of those notes. If you go high, then it's gonna become white, and if you go low, they become less and less and less bright, which can be useful on certain situations. Now, the second, as I explained already, is color or hue, and the third is gonna be saturation. So if I just select all of them and move the velocity down, you can see how they lose color over time. They become gray or they become more saturated. I usually keep them at the top, which means full color, and that changes a lot. I change the colors all the time. And the brightness, I mostly all the time keep it in the middle. Now, next thing, I'm just gonna start over again and then draw something like a smiley, something simple. So I always start with the brightness launchpad, because if I set a color but I don't have any brightness, I cannot see anything. I can just go ahead and try that and move a node around and you don't see anything going on. Same happens with the saturation. So to first draw something, I would rather start on the brightness and then just move around one node until you find the spot you want to leave it on. In this case, this is going to be like one eye. I'm going to just go ahead and copy that here. I can just play and loop, and so I see what's going on. And I see then that note is not quite in the spot I wanted. So I'm gonna put it here. So as you can see, I'm just doing things by trying, not really like going into technical stuff. I just look at the launchpad, loop something, and then start putting notes until I place them all in the drawing kind of thing I want. So I'm just going ahead and keep putting more notes. And then I put another one and make my, let's say those are two eyes from that smiley. And then I go ahead and start drawing the mouth. So that's a serious smiley. So now I'm gonna just make it smile like that. All right, so I have my smiley now. What can I do with that? I can just make it play one for a certain amount of time with the metronome. Let's put the metronome a little bit quiet. Let's put a channel for that metronome. I think that's the one I use. And then play. Okay, well, let's put that metronome down so we have a guide. So you see the smiley is showing up on each half bar in this case. So of course I can just go ahead and copy this 4 times if I want. And I have it doing ta 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 with the tempo. Now, let's say I want this blue, and I want this red, and I want this green, and I want this yellow. So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this information on the rest of the MIDI channels. Then first of all, I'm gonna put the brightness in the middle. Secondly, that's the color. I'm not gonna fill with that yet. And the saturation is already on the top. That's how I want it. So now, I want this one, I set blue, and then I go ahead and choose blue. Second, I can just loop here, so make sure this is blue, make sure this is red, then I go and change this one to yellow. And this, I wanted green. Greenish. All right, let's go like that. It's okay. It looks better here, but the cameras, webcams are, they never give you the right color or the right anything. So now I have this blinking in 4 colors. That's one thing you can do. And let's just go ahead and paint like 1 bar of it, or use 1 bar. I'm gonna move all this around, have it each bit, and work from there. So I have all of them in each 1 bit. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, let's say I want them to fade out. For that, what I would do is to make the notes bigger. And I'll do that, and I'll do that on all of them. Okay, and I want them to go dark, just to go dark. So now I'm gonna play with the brightness. I have that cycling like that, but then I want them to go dark with like a pulsing kind of behavior. So in this case, I'm gonna just slice or chop these notes. I'm gonna chop them in like that. Those are like 16 notes, I'm not sure. All right, and I'm gonna draw the velocities in this way. I'm gonna go ahead and group this just so I don't have to reselect everything, and just copy them 4 times. Now pay attention what happens here. They pulse, and now I can just go and click Alt, right click in the mouse, and I can just look how the animation behaves in slow motion. It pulses down, changes color, pulses down, changes color, and pulses down, and so on. All right, that's one thing you can do. Now let's go back and copy and paste this, put all the saturation, all the brightness in the middle. That's important, I always do, brightness in the middle. And now we have them how they were before. Now let's say I want them to change color gradually. And then in this case, I'm gonna just chop the notes that correspond to the color. Channel number 2, MIDI out number 2. And I just chop these ones and start playing with the velocities like so, if I wanted, and this like that, for example. And I'm gonna just play in slow motion, and they will change color. In this case, it's blue to green, then red to blue, going through magenta, and then this is yellow to red, then green to blue. And if I play that, you'll see this. They just change color. Now with that in mind, you can do many things. But I'm gonna explain to you the resources that are useful for you in the piano roll for animation purposes. For example, one very important thing you can use is grouping with Shift G, and that groups channels so you don't have to reselect or get lost as you work on animations. So you can just go ahead and do 4 groups if I want. In this case, whatever. I'm just explaining how grouping works, not really that I need it here, because this animation is kind of basic. But as you get complex, you will find that tool very, very useful. Next thing that is quite handy is to flip notes around. So let's say I like this, but I want the colors inverted. I want this to go from green to blue instead of blue to green. So I just go ahead and click Alt X, and that brings me, no, that's not the one, it's Alt Y. That brings me to the score flipper. With that, I can just flip horizontally or vertically. Vertically works to when you want to flip animations, when you have like a letter and you want to flip to the other side. And horizontally works time-wise. So in this case, I inverted the tempo, inverted the color. And I'm just going to play that. And now it goes from green to blue instead of blue to green. Previously was like that. So flipping is quite handy. What else? Chopping. Chopping is really, really useful, as you can see already. Copy and paste. Copy and paste, you're going to use a lot. So now I'm going to go ahead and load up a project where I have plenty of examples, and also I can further explain other things. All right, so this is my performance project I recently developed to show it around in at the Dancefair in Holland, and also at the Musikmesse in Frankfurt. If you wanna check up that project, you go to YouTube and then you write Sacco performance, and the first video is going to be that one. There are some other videos. This is an old one with audio cubes that I did 3 years ago, and this is the one I did for Dancefair. Check it out if you want to see how it works, how it looks at the end. All right, so in essence, that is the project I'm using here, where I have many patterns in that grid I already explained, all laid down and in a certain order I wanted. So I have these 2 extra patterns at the bottom, and this is to trigger the animation mode. As you can see, these 3 launchpads are in the default mode, and if I delete some pattern, you'll see that the light goes off, and that is the normal, let's say, normal performance mode feedback for the launchpads. So let's go ahead and play this. And you can see the launchpads that are in the default mode, they only show the patterns where they are and where you are playing. And this one is already in animation mode because of the example I did before. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click on this animation pattern I did, which sets all the launchpads into animation mode. Okay, but I first have to explain how is everything laid down in this project. I have 2 sets of launchpad MIDI outs. This is launchpad number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And I have another extra set. I'm gonna explain why. This is the main set, and this would be my secondary set. Now, if I in this animation pattern, the only thing I have is 1 note on each of the brightness launchpads, and that is that G10 note I told you about that sets the launchpads in animation mode. They are already set there. They have the right value on the velocity. So I'm just gonna go ahead and play the project and play to trigger that pattern. And now all my launchpads are in animation mode. I can just also turn this pattern off. You should always have that pattern at the bottom of your performance, because it's quite handy to go from animation mode to normal mode to check up things if you need. In this case, I'm just gonna put them all in animation mode. Now you see things blinking red now, because this is the pattern that is playing. And if I go and check it out, it's playing all the lights, and brightness is set like this, so it pulses. My color is all set to red. I could just glue all this if I wanted to save on voices. I think it's gonna work. Yeah, perfectly so. You can save voices by doing that if you really need to. There are different cases where you would like to do that. For example, if I set the brightness of something, I don't need to set it every 16 note. I want to set the brightness once and forget about it. And for that, you can just put one note, all the notes in this case, and you don't have to worry about chopping up and setting so many notes. But in this case, it is pulsing by the brightness. And so you see all four pulsing because of the brightness velocities are going down. And the colors are all red. All the colors of the launch pads are red. If I want to change the color of that, for example, launch pad number 1, of course, as I explained before, you just change the velocity and you have another color. Now, let's just check out some of the animations that are here in this project. I'm going to put FL Studio in pattern mode just to click things around and show you animations. Okay, that's one of them. The piano roll looks like this. And if we look inside one of the animations, then you can see it's no more than MIDI notes. Probably what I started doing was, let's just mute everything and mute only launchpad number 1. And that's the animation. What I think I started was I did something like this. Just one row. Probably I started with this actually. Just 2 things. Then I just copy and paste that. To build this kind of line that goes to one side. And then I went ahead and repeated the animation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And I have this kind of nice little pattern. The brightness, again, all in the middle. The colors are all the same in this case. Yes. And the saturation all the way up. Ah, okay, now I get it. The head of each of these little MIDI patterns or score, the heads, which I just, I take a note and I chop it like this and I change the color. And then you have that kind of shape. So the heads of all these scores are all blue, which are this velocity value. But the tails of all these scores are red. That's why you don't see them. But they're just there. And if I just animate slowly, that's what the animation does in slow motion. If I play normally, then I get that animation. There's another really cool and really useful tool in FL Studio, which is the fact that you can stretch notes like this. And that saves you a lot of time when you build something that is kind of complicated. And you want to change the speed, then you can easily do that by stretching the notes. And if you use Alt, you stretch them with snap. And if you don't click anything, they stretch freely. That is going to save you a lot of time. Now let's try flipping this animation. I want it to go the other direction. So I'm going to go ahead and just flip all this and the animation should go the other way around. Things like that you can use, and will save you a lot of time. Let's go on to another animation like text. There's some FL Studio somewhere. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna enable all the launchpads, and I'm gonna play 12. That is number 12. That is FL. And studio is gonna be the fruit. And if I do that while playing the performance, I'm just gonna mute this and play the performance. I'm gonna navigate with the launchpads. The first one I want it on the top. The second, you use the arrows here, right? And then I go down and I set it where I want. And the third one is all the way there. So now I play, and since I arrange things like that in the piano roll, in the playlist, sorry, if I play here, I have chords, and if I play here, I have like wobble bass kind of thing. More bass. I'm hitting these buttons here, and they enable and disable velocity on the launchpads. And since I don't want any velocity here, I just double click them to let if you double click them, you change the mode of them. Yeah. So in this pattern, for example, I have 3 in this slot in the grid. Let's just go there. I have these 3 patterns. You can totally do that in FL Studio. When you have one bar, you put more than one pattern there, and they will play in the order they are set. And there is another good example with something that doesn't make any sound in FL Studio. It doesn't make any animation in this case, because those are just sound effects I wanted to put. But these are all arranged in like several patterns in one bar. So what they basically do is each time I push a button, it goes forward in the order. That is for my build-up, if I want. And now with the FL Studio 12 part, those are 3 patterns, and I'm pushing the same button every time, or the same pad in the launchpad. So, well, keep that in mind, because that is going to help you if you want things in a certain order, like in that case. Now, let's just go to another example and see how the animation is done. For example, and this is the pattern I came with, and again the brightness is at the middle. The colors I'm using here in channel 2, and saturation all the way to the top, as always. Now I use grouping here, so I don't have to take my time and select everything. Like, for example, this. Now I can just group some part of the notes, and I just can select the inversion if I want by hitting Shift I, then I get the opposite notes on my selection. I just can go ahead and group that too. So I can just move things around without having to select them first, which can be a pain. Now I want to change the color of these notes. I select one and I change the color. Change the color of this one, select that part, and I change the color. Let's just play this in slow motion. What is going on here? It's just like this green dots here are like the lead part that is filling up the screen. You see that I changed the colors on this one already. If I play only this, then I get that. If I delete all that brightness also, this is what I get, only the lead part or the heads. Then I'm gonna just undo and do the opposite. I'm gonna delete the heads. Again, select this, Shift I, invert selection, delete. And now I have only the tail of those snakes that fill up the screen. Another example of something that is like has a meaningful shape or something besides something abstract would be some Space Invaders I did. This is one and this is the other. This is not Space Invaders. This is the Space Invaders. In this case, each of these are one frame of that Space Invaders monster. And as I explained before, well, you go with the notes. For example, I loop this. And then I start moving my notes until I find the right place for them. Quite simple. Then what I did was to copy this and move the arms. Move those notes that make the arm go up and down. Color set to green. Brightness set to the middle. Saturation all the way on the top. Let's see another animation. That is a complex one. Looks quite messy, but what I did was to start with one note somewhere, like this note. You see there's like a pattern here. All those. Sadly, I didn't group here, so I cannot show the individual parts as I build them and group them. But basically what I did was this note first, then I just copy it like a stairway to create. I'm gonna see how it looks. Just gonna delete that. And I'm gonna do the same here. Sadly, I have to select everything by hand in this animation. Thing is, this one got very complex at the end and I needed to ungroup everything. So, okay, let's see what this only does. See, here in the first launchpad. Just like one line that goes up. And I think I moved the notes around so they mirror here a little bit. So just don't worry about it. You can just move notes around and see the result. So basically from here what I did was just shift and duplicate things and make some kind of pattern that look sort of good. Let's just copy and paste now, just for the sake of watching what's going on. You see? Let's just play this on only. And as simple as that, I just did one thing, copied it over, then copy, copy, copy. And then you have that. So I'm gonna undo here until the state it was at the beginning. All right, so I cannot do an undo further because I didn't set how many undos I wanted. So I don't know what happened. All right. So I built like this whole thing on one direction. And then what I did was to copy this. Let's just imagine this wasn't there. Like that. And I just selected this, copied over, and flipped it with Alt-Y. And then I'm gonna just copy here and paste it so we have more or less the same information. So basically, let me explain something else, because the piano roll is not made for this kind of things. You see, it's now kind of glitching or having a hard time moving the velocities. Let's wait until it does it, because there is a better way to do that without losing so much time. Okay, I think it's okay, ready. If I want to move all these velocities, I better do with Alt-X. And that seems to work much better than just manually adjusting them. That if you want to just adjust all the velocities in one animation. So keep that in mind. This level scaling tool is going to be really useful for you. So, all right. In this case, I want them just all in the middle. So I do once the level scaling all the way up, and then I do level scaling again until I have all the notes in the middle. Well, you can see those again. So I'm going to just do that twice. Just bring them down to the middle, because this is brightness and I want them in the middle. Otherwise, they are going to be all white. Now they have color. All right. Now you can see that the piano roll is having a little bit of a hard time playing that. But it's just simply because piano rolls are not made for this craziness amount of notes. And if we pay attention here, actually didn't. If I close the piano roll, there's something I have to say before explaining what I was gonna do. But if I close the piano roll, the performance goes all the way up again. You don't have any slowliness associated with the piano roll redraw, so don't worry about it. As long as you close the piano roll, things are gonna be fine again. And if you watch here, you see 425 voices. I'm gonna put just this fast. Yeah, up to 500 voices on that animation alone. That means all these notes playing when they play together. Some have more. I've reached even 1,000 in one animation, and it doesn't seem to affect performance as long as the piano roll is closed. I don't know if we can do something about it, but piano rolls are not made like that. I'm just abusing the piano roll here. There are cool things coming in the future, but I just cannot talk about them yet. But very cool things for animation. You're gonna flip in your pants. So, okay, basically that's how it works. Basically that's how I do animations. And let's just play a little bit the project. So I can show you more or less what was the idea behind. Just gonna unmute. I'm gonna mute that. And so here I have basic rhythms. for example, chords. And I put like a square there, so where if I touch with my finger, there is like a feedback that tells, aha, that's a button. Same things happen here. Have like a bass kind of thing going on here. And I have, well, all the wobble bass thing, and also just different elements to play around. I just didn't follow any musical kind of criteria before building this. I just wanted cool sounds in the project. And then I just played around until I found some cool patterns, or I could build a song with it. So I thought that if I play these three, do you have like a cool rhythm going on, and in between I can just insert some chords like okay, none of these patterns on the top are looping or staying there looping, and they are not in sync. I just wanted them free to play the rhythm you want without being tied to a grid. And the way you do that in FL Studio is by just changing, right-clicking on the lanes here and choosing which performance setting you want. And as you can see, in this case, it's just off the synchronization. And let's go to another pattern. I think they are all like this: hold and stop with stay here for the most part. But the ones that stay looping, they re-trigger themselves, they stay there, and they're in sync to the beats. And the position doesn't matter. But there are these chords here, and it doesn't matter where I play them. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm really sloppy, they will be in sync all the time. So I'm just gonna show you how that works. If I right click on that lane, I see the performance setting is set to hold and stop. So as long as I hold the note, it will stay, but if I don't hold it anymore, it will stop. Motion stay. Synchronization at the trigger moment off, but the position is gonna be set to auto. So that means it kind of runs behind scenes, always synchronized. So when I play, there is this text in the sound saying, you put me in a trance, put me in a trance. And it will always be in sync, it doesn't matter. So that's cool because you can have one phrase and you don't re-trigger the phrase each time you go to a different path. It's kind of, you can change the chord while keeping the voice rolling. This particular patch, it's a Harmor patch, and I think it's this. You see how the chord is changing? but the synchronization stays the same. This was cleverly done by Nucleon. That was part of the voice resynthesis project. And okay, so let's just go ahead and explain roughly how this whole project works. First of all, I have these two. I'm just gonna put this a little bit nah, I'm just not gonna do that. Let's just put it this side and just put this here so I can just have a little bit more space to show you. I have two sets of MIDI outs for all the 4 launchpads, and the reason for that is sometimes you want to play like a background animation, but then you want to trigger some foreground animation. And in this case, if I play this one, that would I consider background animation. But if I want to play this, I don't want that animation to conflict with the front animation. As soon as yeah, but it's that's the concept, to allow another animation to be on top and the other roll once you stop with the animation. So the way I did it was I put 2 sets of launchpads and they have the same ports, but there is this envelope controller telling which MIDI outs are going to be on at a certain moment. So if I play now, you can see actually this is the animation and goes in the first set. But if I want to play another animation, this envelope controller is telling all these mute buttons. I can show you they are connected to the articulator number 1 on the envelope controller. And if I just play another animation, all those buttons will mute. And that allows me to avoid some conflict between animations. So each pattern, in essence, if I go to my playlist and go to the pattern, each pattern has an extra note in this envelope controller. This is the envelope controller number 1 and the articulator number 1, and that will control, as I said, the background animation. I have these like hearts also going on, and if I play animations, they disappear, and the hearts are also in that first set that is going to mute with the second set. So that's that. Next thing in the project is each pattern has obviously an animation and also a sound associated with it. I always play here with patterns. I never put audio waves there if I want to have animation also associated with that sound. That is important to keep in mind. So basically what I have is one note that will trigger one, in this case is a loop. And that's that. If I have another pattern, like for example that, you will find that some synthesizer has some sound associated. Synthesizer has sound that is associated with the whole pattern that will play the animation, blah blah. All right, next thing, video.